Welcome to another session of Learning with ISRAR at ISRAR'S channel. I'm ISRAR Raja, and today our topic is Standard Operating Procedures SOPs in Procurement. But before discussing these SOPs in detail, let's first define the term procurement and SOPs. As we know, procurement is the process of purchasing goods and services for a business, which requires preparation, solicitation, and payment processing, and usually involves several areas of a company like operations, logistics, finance, and many more, and has many internal and external stakeholders. To bring all these stakeholders on same page to achieve the objective of business procurement, we need to have a set of rules and regulations which are standardized and have to be followed by all participants according to their role in the process to have a smooth and conflict free process or operation. These rules are called standard operating procedures or SOPs. After defining the term procurement, let's now define SOPs. A generic definition of SOP is a procedure specific to the operation that describes the activities necessary to complete tasks in accordance with the industry regulations, laws, or even just organizational own standard for running the business. After defining the procurement and SOPs, now let's discuss about procurement SOPs. SOPs of procurement include the scope and the purpose of the process, criteria, and methods for identifying and evaluating needs and requirement, procedures and tools for sourcing and selecting suppliers, process and standard for negotiating and contracting with the suppliers, systems and control for ordering and receiving and making the payments. These SOPs are essential for procurement planning to be effective and timely solicitation for bids, proposals, awarding the contract, and delivery of the goods and services, and proper suppliers relationship management. Different organizations have different SOPs according to their needs and organizational structure or legal identity. But I'm here giving you some of the typical SOPs of procurement. So let's discuss these SOP one by one. Okay, now let's start with the number one. It is the responsibility for requisition. So, who will be responsible for the requisition and who will be going to initiate the purchasing process? Departments inside an organization will from time to time need material and they generate a purchasing request for procurement department. This SOP tells us who is responsible or authorized to generate that requisition. So a purchase requisition is basically an official order used to inform department managers or purchasing officer about a decision to make purchase. This prompt the purchasing department to start the purchasing process. The finance team will also use this document to coordinate reporting procedure will be with the accounting. The next SOP is required information for the requisitions. So what information should be included in the requisition document? Requisition forms typically includes line items such as the name of the person or the company making the request, date of the request, items requested, and the delivery date they need and the delivery location and all other content informations. Okay, the next one is the responsibilities with regard to authorizing the requisitions. It means who will authorize the requisition and procedure of authorization. After completing the requisition form, it is submitted to the management for approval. The manager reviews and approves it. then send the request to the purchasing department, like the manager. The purchasing department reviews and approves the requisition. The requisition must be authorized by a person who has been assigned as the authorizer by the purchasing administrator. After the requisition is authorized and approved and all the processes completed, then it comes to the purchasing department, which is responsible for the procurement planning. So here in this SOP, it tells us that who will be responsible for procurement planning, like what are the roles and responsibility, needs and requirement, timeline, constraints or vendor selection criteria, contract types, payment terms and methods, and if there is any risk involved in this procurement. The next SOP is about the who is the responsible for acquisition of this purchases. So usually is a program manager or other official responsible for the program has overall responsibility for the acquisition planning or and getting the required goods or services. The next SOP is about the procedure for the selection, enlistment and the pre-qualification of the suppliers. So primary objective is the vendor's enlistment to create a registered qualified vendor suppliers for various products and commodities. Next SOP is about the purchasing methods. So what are the methods should be follow in purchasing, like open tendering, restricted tendering, request for proposals, two-stage tendering, request for quotation or single source purchasing. Okay, the next one is about solicitations documents. So what kind of documents are required and condition by which the interested bidders obtain the information needed to submit the bids. The most common type of solicitation document is the request for proposal, which is used when a company is seeking bids from potential vendors. Other types of solicitation documents could be included the request for quotation, request for information, and statement of the work. So the next SOP is like request for proposal request should include. So what should be included in RFP? So a request for proposal is an open request for bids to complete a new project proposed by the company or other organizations that issues it. It is meant to open up competition and to encourage a variety of alternative proposals that might be considered by the project's planners. So we have to write about the background and introduction. It should be have proposed project goals and scope of service, and any anticipated selection schedule. Describe the time and the place for the submission of proposal, clearly defined our timeline and specified the key elements of a proposal, and also make our evaluation criteria clear. This SOP deals with the justification and the documentation if there is a sole or single source. So what kind of justification or documentation is required if there is a sole or a single source? So this will basically spell out the reasons why you are selecting only one source. So a sole source exists when goods or services because of unique characteristics or other reasons are only available from a single source. So sole source justification are reviewed and approved by the procurement services before an order being placed. This SOP deals with the procedures and the technical requirement for the submissions of bids. So what kind of procedures and technical requirements are required? So you have to follow all these procedures and technical requirement to accept any bid. The next SOP is Procurement Review Committee, in which it will tell us that what will be the composition and the working of the Procurement Review Committee. So Procurement Committee review the procurement process, including tendering, evaluation, contract award, and reporting mechanism for monitoring compliances with the relevant laws and regulation and the codes of the business conduct. SOP about the guidelines for the preparation of comparative statement and the approval of grid. These statements can be used to analyze the products for purchase orders in businesses. The comparative reports analyze the product price, quality, quantity, vendor's reputation for the previous purchases we have made, and for these all purchasing decisions. These formats are also used for final approval from the purchase order authorities within the company. This SOP is for the preparation of purchase order or agreement or a contract. It tells us that who will prepare the PO or contracts and authorize it and sign it. In this SOP, procedures for handling complaints and grievances are and their redressal have been mentioned. So it is like establishing a separate function independent of business lines to deal with the customer's complaint. The function may be headed by a senior executive. The next SOP is about the procedure for handling the defective liability period and rejection of the goods. The defectives liability period is a fixed period of time starting from the date of practical completion. It's kind of a guarantee that in which time we can go back to our supplier about any if we have any complaint and we can reject the product. The last SOP in this series is procedures for work instructions, for contract completion and PO closing. So a contract is considered complete when a contractor has completely obliged, performed and fulfilled all his contractual and legal obligation specified in the contracts. So this was the last SOP in the purchasing procurement process. In this presentation, I try to put all the SOPs of procurement together. So I hope now you have a fair idea that what SOPs are required to fulfill a procurement process smoothly without any hiccup. So thank you for listening and take care till next presentation.